and thanks for joining us for this session where we're going to be talking about thinking about university. We're going to be covering the basics of university and why you might like to apply. And we're going to be talking about student finance and resolving any questions that you might have about that. And then we're also going to be introducing the two universities, Oxford and Cambridge. The aim of this presentation isn't to convince you to apply to Oxbridge in any way, it's just to give you all the facts about university in Oxbridge so you can make informed decisions in the future when you're thinking about university. But it's not just me talking today, I'm also joined by my colleague at Oxford who I'll ask him to introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Joe and I work at Brasenose College at the University of Oxford.
And we're also joined, more importantly, by all our student helpers who are with us today from Oxford and Cambridge. So if you'd all like to introduce yourselves and what you study, which of the colleges you're at, maybe throw in where you're from, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Helen, I'm from Essex and I study economics and management at Brasenose College at the University of Oxford.
Hi, I'm Kelvin, I'm from Southampton, I study maths at St Catharine's in Cambridge.
Hi, I'm Libby, I'm from Lincoln and I study French and German and modern languages at St Catharine's College, Cambridge.
Hi, I'm Louis, I'm from Leeds and I study law at Brasenose College in Oxford.
Hi, I'm Maya, I'm from Southwest London and I do geography at Brasenose College, Oxford.
Hi, I'm Tom, I study physics at Brasenose and I'm from Surrey.
Thanks everyone. So this is the first session out of a series of webinars that Joe and I are running this year, which is hopefully going to give you all the tools that you need when thinking about university, give you the opportunity to meet academics and staff and students at the universities of Oxford and Cambridge over the next few months and hopefully answer any questions that you've got about university. So in this session today, we're going to be using the Q&A box. If you've used Zoom before, which I think a lot of you in this last year will have done, you can just drop any questions into that Q&A box that you want us to answer today. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Joe.
Okay, yeah, so what's going to happen is I'm going to do the first part of the presentation. Kathryn, you can hear me, right? Good. Just can't see my mute button. I'm going to do the first half of the presentation, which is going to be about contextualizing. It's going to be about trying to introduce the idea of university to you. And I'll pick on the helpers a little bit, the student helpers a little bit, and we'll get their views on one or two things. But I'm actually going to go through this presentation quite quickly because we really want to get onto the Oxbridge stuff where the student helpers will have their opinions and Kathryn will be talking. And also we want to get onto the Q&A where we get your views and your ideas and questions. So some of this might go quite quickly. So yeah, this is just an introductory slide. I'm going to try and answer a bunch of questions. I'm going to try and answer where you might go to university, why you might go, what you might study, and also how you learn and how it differs from school. So that's the basic plan for the next 10 minutes. So stick with me. All right. So the first thing to say about university is it's such an amazing opportunity. It should be a really exciting proposition to be able to go to university. And if you think about it, most people go when they're 18 or 19 years old. And it's just about the time when you're getting a bit of itchy feet maybe, and you're getting a bit fed up with your parents or guardians. I'm sure you love them, but you maybe starting to feel like it's time to move on and do something different. And then university comes around as a potential option. Most people move away from home and go to a different city or town to study at university. Now, you don't have to. You could stay where you are and maybe commute, but the majority of people do. The majority of people have a fresh start and start somewhere new. And we're really, really lucky in this country because we have literally hundreds of universities. They're spread all across the country. And there's lots of other places that do degrees. So that's like university style qualifications that aren't universities, but they're still higher education institutions. And they're literally all over the place. So you have masses and masses and masses of choice, which is really great. I did want to just mention the thing at the bottom where it says Russell Group Universities, 24 Russell Group Universities. So you might have heard of the phrase Russell Group before. So I just thought I'd point out what it means. So there's these 24 universities that consider themselves to be the best in the country. And most people would agree that they are excellent universities. They tend to be selective, so they tend to have more applicants than places available. So they tend to be quite competitive to get into. But one of the key messages of this seminar is that you can definitely apply. You can definitely go for it. You could apply for Russell Group University, and there shouldn't be anything stopping you. Just the fact that your teachers have recommended you for this session and that you've come along, to me, is a great indicator that you're going to be the kind of caliber students that could apply to Russell Group universities. So there'll be more about that later. Oxford and Cambridge are included in the Russell Group, but just so you know what that phrase means if you hear it. So yeah, there's loads and loads of choice, and there's universities all over the country. All right, so trying to answer the question, why might you go? Well, we could spend hours on this. There's lots of different reasons. And funny, the first thing to say is you actually don't have to go. You don't need to go to university if you don't want to. You could do an apprenticeship, you could do some training, you could start working straight away, you could go traveling, you could have a break. You don't have to go to university if you don't want to. Now, I'm a university person, and so is everyone else on the panel. So we're likely to be pretty in favour of universities, but it will be up to you to choose. Nobody can tell you whether to go or not. Anyway, so there's lots of compelling reasons. There's the thing about careers, and there's the tile about money. I'm going to leave those because I've got a couple of slides on those in a minute. So I'll come back to those. But there's lots of other reasons. So you meet new people. It tends to be absolutely amazing fun. You tend to learn transferable skills that you can apply to other areas of life. You learn how to analyze and how to argue and how to think and how to talk to people. You get some great qualifications that you can show off about. You become very independent. So as I said, most people move away from home or have a certain amount of independence from home that they didn't before. So they might learn to cook, might learn to deal with their own finances. So you kind of, becoming a young adult, really, and university is a great way, a great stepping stone to that. But for me, there's those two tiles that you might have noticed I haven't mentioned yet. So in-depth knowledge and to study the subject that you love. Those are really, really important. You have to find a subject that you want to study at university because it has to be something that you enjoy. So those tiles for me are the most important ones, but you get to choose. So I think I'll pick on a couple of helpers. So Helen, I'm not necessarily going to ask you why you went, but now you're at university, what would you say is your most favourite part of it? What's your favourite thing?
I really like getting to live away from home and kind of the independence that you get from that. So that's probably my favourite number one thing, and getting to meet different people who don't live in the same area as me. That's really fun.
Yeah, for me, it's how much flexibility you have to study whatever you want to study. You'll know from GCSEs that you have a set sort of a set list of things that you have to study, and you can't really deviate from that too much. You have to follow that quite closely. And at university, you can more or less do whatever you want within the field, which is really exciting.
That's brilliant. Yeah, thanks very much. I like those snappy answers. Those are good. Yeah, so there's a lot more flexibility, but yeah, and all the things that Helen said about independence and meeting new people. Okay, so just a few thoughts about that. Now, I said that I'd leave the money and the career thing for the next slide, so I'm going to go into that now. Here's just an example. So the thing is that if you have a university degree, you're likely to have more job options available to you. So this Tesco example is just a nice, neat example. So Tesco is massive, a huge employer, take on lots of people every year. Now, if you don't have a university degree, you can definitely work for Tesco, but you might go into a kind of cashier, shop assistant type role, which pays about £14,000 a year to begin with, which is nice. But if you have a university qualification, if you're a graduate, you'll tend to begin with to earn a lot more. So you might go into a graduate job, and they tend to pay a little bit more, 26 to 32,000. So maybe you'll work in management or advertising or accounts or marketing or something. So it's just an example of how you get a premium for having had a university degree. So I think that's important to bear in mind. It doesn't necessarily matter for Tesco, at least, which degree you've done, which subject you did. They just want people who have got those transferable skills. Okay, so, and then the second thing I've got is a graph. Now, I don't want to linger on this point too much because, money isn't that important. But if you just let that graph soak in for a second, you can see that the more education you do, the more earning power you're likely to have on average. Now, there's loads of people in this country with no qualifications who are millionaires for sure and have fantastic careers, and that's fine. So this is only an average. And there's plenty of people who have an Oxbridge degree who aren't on a high wage. So these are averages, but generally you can see the pattern. The more education you get, the more likely you are to have having a higher earning power. And if you go to some of the selective universities, the Russell Group that I mentioned earlier, or maybe Oxford and Cambridge, you tend to have even more earning power. So yeah, I don't want to make a big deal about this because money is not everything by any means, but the statistics do speak for themselves. So that's more food for thought, hopefully. All right, I'm going to move on. I'm going to talk about something else. I'm going to talk about what you might want to study at university. Now we're benefiting from Kathryn's amazing graphics here. So here we go. So this is your learning journey. So this is like the pathway that you're on right at the moment. So you're doing GCSEs at the moment, probably most of you, and you're doing a whole bunch of different subjects. Maybe you don't absolutely love every single one of them, but you know, you're probably getting on with those okay. Then when you get to A-level or equivalent, you might be doing BTECs or you might be doing IB or something. When you get into sixth form, you'll be doing 3 or 4 subjects probably. So then when you get to university, it's even more specialized than sixth form. So you will be studying 1 or maybe 2 subjects. So Helen, I can see there studying economics and management, so 2. Whereas Maya, who I can also see on my screen, is doing geography, just a single subject. So for 3 or 4 years, studying a subject in depth. So you can probably guess it's just so important to pick a subject that you're passionate about and you're excited about studying. Okay, so how might you do that? Well, you might be able to pick something from your school, which you were already studying at GCSE, which you love, and you just want to carry it on. You want to do it at A level, and then you want to maybe do it at degree level. And you can do that. You can do geography at university, as you can see. So that might be you. You might be in the position where you're already studying something that you love. But for many people, it's not the case. And it might be that you encounter something at A level that you're really passionate about. So maybe you'll do economics, having not done it before, and you love it so much that you decide you really want to do it at university. So that, again, that might be the category that you fall into. But don't lose heart if that's not you, if you don't find that subject that you're completely passionate about at GCSE or A level, because there's absolutely thousands of degree courses out there that you can do that you would have never studied at school at all. Yacht design being one of them. Not many schools do yacht design GCSE, right? So, but you can still do it at university. So university is all about an incredible array of choice, and there's just so many things that you can do, having not even heard of them probably. What I think you should do is have a look on the UCAS website. So that's UCAS. I'm sure somebody can put it in the chat. And that's the website that has all the university subjects available, and you can type in different searches and you can find out what there is. So just find out what there is around and just get excited about it. Don't be anxious or worried, just be excited about the potential of university in the future, because there's lots of opportunities. Okay, so that's that thought. I'm going to move on swiftly to how you learn now. So being at university is a bit different to school because you study in a different way. There's a different rhythm of life to what there was at school. So instead of just having classes the whole time, you have a variety of different ways of learning. So you have lectures. Recently they've been online, but they will, I hope, return to the physical lectures where you go into a massive lecture theatre and watch somebody talk. So you'll be doing that. You'll do labs if you're doing a science. You might do some field work, like going off and measuring something. If you're doing something like biology, you might have some seminars. But there's also a lot of independent study. So being at university, we kind of leave you a lot more to think things through yourself. And then we see how you're going, we monitor you and ask you what you've been thinking about. So we tend to offer lots of libraries, lots of library spaces and things. So we want you to do the contact hours, but also think things through for yourself. So again, I'll just get a couple of examples. So Tom, if you're there, you must have done quite a few labs over the years. Do you want to tell us what the labs are like and what kind of things you do in labs doing physics at university?
Yeah, for sure. So for my first few years, we have labs that are sort of similar to experiments that you'd do at school, in that they're all sort of set up beforehand, and they usually take 1 or 2 days. And then in your last year, which is what I'm doing now, you actually can work with supervisors for research. So you're actually going into doing proper things that people are using in their actual research. So you get to do quite a lot of labs, and you sort of progress as you go through to more and more cutting edge stuff.
Cool, thank you very much. That's brilliant. Then Maya, I was wondering, although maybe you've not experienced many physical lectures, I can't remember, what are the geography lectures like? What kind of things do people cover, and are they interesting?
Yeah, so they're really interesting. We say that geography is everything because we cover quite a broad range of topics. We've had physical lectures about climate and ecology, which have been really interesting, and our practicals have been online, and we've done things online like sampling, using online apps and stuff like that. So it's been really good.
Brilliant. Yeah, and finally, maybe we could get Louis. What about the independent study stuff? Like, how much do you find yourself doing, and where do you actually do your independent study?
Yeah, so for a degree like mine, which is quite reading heavy, which means you have to do quite a lot of the main bulk of your work by yourself. Obviously, the lectures supplement it, but most of your work is going to be spent. Most of your time is going to be spent in the library, getting through your readings, reading different cases, doing your readings for the week. And I think that's probably what I've liked the most. It gives you a chance to sort of figure out your own way of working, figure out how you're going to deal with things, and figure out your own schedule and how you work best. So yeah, as I said, I do most of my work in the Brasenose College Library, but there's many places you can do your work in different libraries and in different places.
Brilliant, thanks very much. So I've got 2 more slides, and they're going to be very brief. All I really want to say is about the financial side of thinking about university is you can definitely afford it. Don't let anybody ever tell you that university in this country is not feasible for you to go to because of the financials. That's not true. So what happens is there are like costs. You have tuition fees, and then you have living costs like accommodation and food. But there's just lots of help. So the government will give you a loan to cover the teaching, but then also maintenance loans and grants to help you with paying for accommodation, for food. And then we give lots of other support as well. The universities will give out scholarships and grants and bursaries. So there's lots of help available. You won't get crippled by terrible debt. You pay back most of it later on in life once you're earning money and in small chunks. And it's all very manageable. So don't think you can't afford to go to university, because it's definitely not the case. Right, I think that's everything I was going to say, and now I'm just going to be the person that moves the slides along so Kathryn can talk. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, for this next part of the session, I'm going to be introducing Oxford and Cambridge to you. I know from seeing in the Q&A, some people have a lot of experience with Oxford and Cambridge. They've maybe heard certain words before that we use, and other people are completely brand new to Oxford and Cambridge, and that's absolutely fine. So if you're seeing questions come up in the Q&A, and it's things that you haven't come across before, don't worry, we're going to explain it all to you. And also we've got this series of webinars as well, where we're going to be chatting to you about these different things that other people are mentioning, giving you subject choice advice and all that kind of stuff. So don't worry if other people have a bit more information than you at this point, it'll all level out. So I'm going to start off by talking about the kind of reputation that both universities have. So at both Oxford and Cambridge, we're typically in the top 5 universities in the world, which is really exciting. And we've got this international reputation for world-class teaching. We're the 2 oldest and often the top universities in the UK. And we've got this reputation, which can sometimes, a lot of students don't actually know why we've got this reputation or what it is that we're actually able to offer students who come and study with us. One of the things is the one-to-one teaching that we offer, which a few people have mentioned in the Q&A. So this is something at Oxford that's called tutorials, and at Cambridge we call it supervisions, no idea why, but they're the same thing, and it's essentially the chance to have a teaching session in a really small group, so 2 or 3 students sat with a teacher, often an expert in your field, maybe someone who's even written the book on the subject that you're studying, and you have the chance to sit down with them for an hour, usually on the sofa in their office, and chat about the work that you've been doing that week. So be that problem sheets if you're studying maths, or maybe an essay that you've written if you're studying history. And it's a chance to sit down with this person who really knows their stuff, get advice from them, get guidance from them, ask them about anything that you didn't understand in the lecture. And this is a really unique thing that Oxford and Cambridge have that most of the universities don't, which is part of the reason why we then have this reputation for world-class teaching. We've also got excellent career prospects, and this is regardless of degree. So whatever degree, whatever subject you come and study at Oxford and Cambridge, our graduates have got excellent career prospects, and we have excellent post-graduation employment rates. We've got a great career service who look after you, even if you decide, at age 50, you want to switch up careers, you can go back to the career service and get support from them. One of the things we've got as well is we do have a lot of fantastic facilities and resources. And these aren't just all, a lot of people think they're all going to be old-fashioned things in old-fashioned buildings, like this one that you can see on the left-hand side here in Oxford. But actually, there are a lot of fantastic and kind of cutting-edge, state-of-the-art resources that we've got as well. One example of a recent new development is in Oxford. They recently got a donation of £100 million towards a new institute to fight antimicrobial resistance. I had to look up exactly what that was, but that's an exciting opportunity for students and researchers at the University of Oxford to get involved in some cutting edge research that's going to affect the globe. And that's just one example of the kind of donations that are being attracted and the new institutions that can be set up at Oxford and Cambridge to support students and support the research that's going on. But because of these amazing facts about Oxford and Cambridge, it means there's also a flip side. It means that because we've got this reputation, there are often a lot of myths, misconceptions that get bandied about the two universities. So I'm going to have a bit of a chat about those now. These might be things that you already believe, that you might have heard of before. Maybe your teachers or parents or guardians have had these points of view, but we're just going to go through them and go through the realities too. One thing we often hear is that some students think that everyone at Oxbridge went to a private school, so a school that you have to pay for. And if they come to Oxford or Cambridge, they're going to be one of the few students who went to a state school where you're all from today, so a school that you don't have to pay for. But actually, in reality, a huge proportion of our students went to state schools. So at St Catharine's, where I work, over 83% of the students who will be starting next year actually went to state schools. They're in the massive majority. And I think it's very similar at Brasenose, where Joe works. It's about 82%. So that's a huge proportion of students from state schools. So you're definitely not in the minority at all. Another thing we often get hear from students is that they think Oxbridge is going to be too expensive for them. Obviously, we've got these beautiful kind of Harry Potter looking buildings, and it's really easy to think, okay, that isn't a place that I can afford. I couldn't possibly have a room there. And I know seeing on the Q&A, a lot of people have also been asking today, is it expensive? What are the prices like? Can I afford it? So I'm glad that you've been bringing those questions to us so we can ask our student ambassadors to answer those. Because in reality, we do subsidise rooms and food costs just like any other university would. You apply for student finance loans and grants in the exact same way that Joe was explaining. So you apply for all that money in the same way that you would if you were applying to any other university. And then on top of that, at Oxford and Cambridge, because we're attracting all this funding, it means that there's loads of bursaries and grants available. So that's money that you can basically get from the university that you don't have to pay back. And that can be money towards things that you need, like books, food, rent, but it also can be money towards fun stuff. So getting money towards the flights for your year abroad if you're doing a language course, or it could be money towards getting involved in a sport, or money towards setting up a student club where you want to meet like people who have similar interests to you. So there's all that kind of financial support on offer as well. So we really don't want you to have this image at university or that Oxbridge is too expensive for you. Whatever your background, you can afford it. And this is something that I've heard a lot more recently, but I get told a lot by students, I would say particularly in kind of maybe year 10 and 11 at school, that they have this image that Oxford students do nothing but study. And if they come to Oxford or Cambridge, they're not going to have like a typical student life and that everyone's just going to sit in the library all day they're going to be reading their books in their room all evening, and they're not actually going to do any fun stuff. Whereas actually, at the two universities, there are over 800 societies at each one, and over 80 different sports that you can get involved in. So literally anything that you can think of that you've got as a hobby that you'd like to try out, you can do at the two universities. And there's also lots going on in the cities as well. So they are just like regular cities. They've got cinemas, they've got bars, they've got cafes, they've got theatres, they've got shopping centres, all the stuff that you could want from the city. We've also got at Oxford and Cambridge. But I'm going to stop talking a bit, and I'm going to ask some of our student helpers whether they'd like to chip in and say whether any of these myths were things that they believed before coming to Oxford and Cambridge, or if there were any other myths that they believed that they then realised weren't the case when they got to the universities.
I definitely did worry that perhaps Oxbridge students do nothing but study, in the sense that they have no fun. And I can definitely dispel that myth. I've had lots of fun at my time of uni. We definitely do our fair share of kind of work and play. And so it's all good fun. So definitely don't worry about that if you're looking to apply to Oxford or Cambridge.
I'd also say the one about everyone at Oxbridge went to private school. This is something that I worried about as well before I started, and it's just not the case at all. I went to a state school. Most of my friends went to state schools, and I think one of the best things about uni is that there's such a good mix of people from all over the country, from all different backgrounds, and you know there'll be people who are like you there, but it's a really good opportunity to meet people from all different backgrounds. So yeah, it's definitely not the case that everyone went to private school.
Thanks very much. And one thing I'd also like to point out, because I know, quite a few of us went to state schools, and that's something that we were worried about. But then when you actually get to Oxford and Cambridge, you realise you're in the same boat, and you might make friends with people from private schools, and you haven't even realised it because no one really minds. And actually, at the end of the day, private school students aren't really any different. They're just people who had a different education to the one that you had. And so that's probably what I'd add to that. I'd really like to explore a bit more. We've chatted about some of the societies and sports that exist, but I don't just want you to take my word for it. So perhaps I could pick on a couple of student helpers if you'd like to say some of the societies and sports that you've got involved in at Oxford or Cambridge.
I'm involved in university drama. So how it works is you get put on a mailing list, which you can sign up for, and then people post like audition opportunities on the website. And even through COVID, there's been loads of drama projects to get involved in, which is really fun. Yeah,
I think if we're going to talk about sport for a minute, the college system makes it really, really easy to get involved in sport at a non-intensive, not high level, very easy to get, very relaxed way of playing sport. Like I know lots of people who just started playing football last year, for example, started playing rugby for the first time, started playing tennis, etc., etc. Obviously, the university has its sports teams, which obviously if you want to put more effort into, if you want to really go for it, then there's all that there. But on the college level, it's very easy to just essentially have a kick about football, just have very relaxed ways of getting involved with sports with no pressure at all.
Thanks everyone. And I'd say on the other side of that as well, if you want to come to Oxford and Cambridge and you don't actually want to get involved in any sports or societies and you just want to sit in your room and read, or you want to sit in your room and watch Netflix, that's absolutely fine too. There's plenty of students who come and don't get involved in all these opportunities, so don't feel you have to if it doesn't sound like something that appeals to you. A few of us have mentioned the college system before, and that's something that I'm going to explain now if Joe can click through to the next slide. So this is something that is slightly different to other universities in the UK. So a few of the universities have a similar system where they call different parts of their university college, but it works a bit differently at Oxford and Cambridge. So you might hear this a lot when you're looking on Oxford and Cambridge websites, and that can be one of the things that prospective students find the most confusing about us. So we're going to attempt to clear up kind of any questions that you've got about the college system. So all our students here today, obviously we've heard that they're either from St Catharine's College or from Brasenose College, so we're going to explain what that means, as well as being a member of the actual university itself. So all of our students are either at Oxford or Cambridge, they're also belonging to a college as well as the university. And at each of these colleges, there's usually around 300 to 500 undergraduate students. So that's students coming along to do their first degree at either university. We got around 30 colleges at both of the universities. And when you come, you do get to have a first choice of college if you want to. So we've got about 30 different colleges in each city dotted around. They're each basically like a little group of buildings. It's where you're probably going to be living, spending most of your time. The people at your college will be the people that you'll typically meet first. And they're all slightly different, but you'll see when I show a couple of photos now what the colleges look like. A lot of them were founded, about 500 years ago. So they tend to have quite a lot of old-fashioned buildings in there, but then they'll also have some really modern parts too. So our students that are here today from Cambridge, they study at CATS, St Catharine's College in Cambridge, and the students from Oxford today are at Brasenose College, which is one of the 30-ish colleges at Oxford that you can choose. It's not just where you're living, there's a lot on offer inside a college that's more than just the typical halls that you might have heard of at other universities, so kind of where you have your room. What you'll actually find inside a college. So if you do come to Oxford or Cambridge, you're living in kind of this little set of buildings called a college, but it's more than just your room. It's where you're going to end up having kind of your community. It sounds really cheesy, but you'll probably make, best friends there, see these people as your family. You're going to have access to fantastic facilities. So every college has got at least one library. There's usually a computer room, a music practice room, a gym, access to sports facilities, a student common room. You've got welfare and support in there. So you have something that's basically a bit like your student council, if you've got a school council, but to kind of represent the students at your college. And it's also where those small group teaching sessions that I talked about take place. So typically you'd be having those teaching sessions in an office that's somewhere within your college. I'm maybe going to pick on the students again here and ask them to chat a bit about what they like about the college system and what they maybe particularly like about their college.
I am at St Catharine's in Cambridge, and my favourite thing about it is that it's very friendly. It's known as being the friendliest college in Cambridge. Everyone is very welcoming. It feels quite homely. It's very cosy, and it's quite small as well. Which I think is quite nice because it means it's very easy to get to know lots of people. And yeah, it's a really lovely it feels like home, which I think is quite important when you go from school and it's your first time living out of home. Yeah.
I really like the college system because it allows you to kind of meet a lot of people that don't do your subject and who you don't necessarily live like right next door to, although you all kind of live together, often in your first year at least. And so it's just nice to be able to have kind of a smaller community within university that you're a part of, as well as the kind of big university as a whole, because obviously university is a lot bigger than school or sixth form generally. So it's quite nice to be part of that smaller community.
To sort of elaborate on what Louis said, the college system means that you can get involved with a lot of sort of societies. We have a lot of music events that students put on, and you can get involved in sport that's sort of quite chilled and quite friendly, as opposed to necessarily having to do something for the university or to high level. So it just means there's a lot more stuff that you can get involved in, which sort of makes it really fun.
Thanks everyone. We've also had a couple of questions in the Q&A about colleges, so I'll quickly answer those now. Some people asking, is there a college that's best for a certain subject? That's another one of the myths about Oxford and Cambridge. So in reality, there's no college that's better for a certain subject, and there's no college that's easier or harder to get into. So people can literally make their college like first choice decision based on the smallest criteria ever. So for example, I picked my college as my first choice because the washing machines were free, and for me that was like a game changer, and I picked it for that reason. Other people might pick it because it's 3 minutes walk away from where their lectures are going to be. So it can be based on a really small reason and doesn't have to be something to do with the academic side of things, or how easy or hard it might be to get into. So with all colleges, you stand the same chance of getting in. I'm now going to move on to chatting about what it actually is that Oxford and Cambridge are looking for in their students. These are the things that we are and aren't looking for in our students. So it sounds really obvious, but we're looking for the right qualifications and subjects. And that's something that we're going to give more advice on when we do a subject choice workshop in a couple of months' time. So we're really going to give you that advice on how to make decisions that are going to give you the most open possibilities out there for going to university, and they're not going to narrow down your chances of applying to something that you might be interested in a few years' time that you maybe haven't considered yet. So we're looking for people with those right qualifications and subjects. So for example, a few people have asked, what do you need to study medicine? One of the key A-levels or equivalent subjects that you need for medicine is actually chemistry. So we'll be giving you all that information in a later session. We're looking for academic ability and potential. So that means students that are going to come to Oxford or Cambridge and they're going to really thrive in that one-to-one teaching session kind of environment that we can give. So we really want to give students who are going to make the most of that situation the opportunity to thrive in the environment. And then also as well, we want people who are enthusiastic about their subject. So it's not good enough just being like, oh, should I just pick that because that's where my good grades maybe are. We want people who are going to be really excited about their course for the 3 or 4 years, or maybe even 6 years if you're applying for medicine or vet medicine. We want people who are going to kind of stay engaged and stay enthusiastic about their subject. We've had a few people asking these questions in the Q&A as well. So I've popped these in here. We get asked this a lot. Do you need all these extracurricular activities to have a good chance of coming to Oxford or Cambridge? So extracurricular activities might be something like being on your school council, being captain of the football team, playing grade 3 recorder. These aren't things that we need you to have to apply to Oxford and Cambridge. Some of the universities will put weight on these extracurricular activities, but for Oxford and Cambridge, we don't care about these. So it's great that you do them, carry on doing them if that's what you find fun, but don't think that you have to pursue these extracurricular interests just for Oxford or Cambridge. And we're also not looking for people from particular backgrounds. So I know a few people have put in the Q&A box, do you have kind of outreach criteria? Are you looking for people from certain backgrounds? We are trying to stay as fair as possible. So we do take contextual data into account. If someone's had a disadvantaged background, then we will take that into account. But we're not looking for people from particular backgrounds. So we don't need you to have connections or to know anyone who's gone to Oxbridge before, or to have money, or to have parents or guardians who've gone to university. That kind of thing doesn't matter for us. It's all the things in these green boxes: having the academic potential, having the right subjects, having the subject passion. It's really about you and the course, not these other aspects that we've got on here. But I realise that I've spoken quite a bit now, so I'm going to hand over to Joe to lead this Q&A session so that you can hear from someone else other than me. But this is going to be mainly focused on the students kind of giving you their experiences of university and Oxford and Cambridge.
Right, thanks very much. Yeah, so we've had hundreds of questions, which is fantastic. And you might have seen we've been frantically typing away like this, and that's to try and answer some of them, but there's no way that we're going to get to them all. So I'm just going to kind of try to pick on a few, if that's okay, and get the students to help me answer them. So maybe Louis and Libby can answer this one, which is, how hard is the step up from school to university? So starting from Louis, did you feel like it was a really big transition, or did you cope with it okay?
There's definitely a change in the way you need to work. I didn't necessarily find it hard. I think it's just an adjustment in like how much you're going to be working. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's harder, just you have to kind of know that you got to commit to doing a little bit more. And you got to be aware of the fact that it's essentially sometimes going to be quite a lot of work days, but at the same time, you're going to have a lot of days off. It's just a question of learning how to manage it for yourself. I think obviously as you get older, that kind of becomes easier anyway. As you've done A-levels, they help you out. So I think it's not necessarily hard. It is just a kind of maturing in the way you work and making sure that you manage yourself and schedule it properly. Yeah.
Great. Anything to add, Libby?
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that. It is a big step up, but it's perfectly manageable. Everybody is in the same boat. I found the work was a step up because so much of it is independent. You don't have as many classes. You're doing a lot of reading, a lot of writing on your own. I found that I quite enjoyed that. I liked having a bit more freedom. So the work is a step up, but I think it's perfectly manageable, and there are lots of people to talk to if you're finding it difficult.
Fab, thanks very much. Another question is, how did you decide what degree to do?
So I picked my A-levels based on what I was most interested, because I knew I didn't want to do things like you need to choose your A-levels like medicine. I knew I didn't want to do those. And then I just found that geography was my favorite A-level out of the ones that I studied, and I decided to apply for it for a degree. It's quite boring, but that's how
when you pick A-levels, you pick 3 or 4, and that sort of limits your choices. So at that time, I thought I wanted to study engineering. So I did maths, further maths, physics and chemistry. But I got to about the summer of lower sixth and decided that I actually really loved maths. So I changed my mind and I ended up applying for maths, and I've clearly made the right decision from my point of view. So sometimes you make a decision and then you go along and you realize that actually you've changed your mind, and that's fine. It's fine to change your mind before applying or even during the process. And I think quite a lot of people will, but yeah, I think the most important thing is to do something you're interested in, because you're going to spend 3 to 4 years doing it. So if you're not interested, you're not going to get through it.
Excellent. There's quite a lot of questions about exam tips. So like, how do you get through your GCSEs and how did you approach revising and going through your A-levels? So Tom looks as if he's either very still or frozen, so we'll leave Tom for now. But Helen, as you'll be an exam professional, you've done so many, what are your top tips for getting through examinations?
My top exam tips, I mean, use your GCSEs to try out different revision techniques. Maybe different ones work for you, maybe different ones work in different subjects. I remember when I was doing my GCSEs and my A-levels, because of the nature of the kind of A-levels that I took and the GCSEs that I took, I did a lot of past papers. I found that really useful. And I think just, ask your teachers if you're unsure around a certain subject, and chat to your friends. I always like talking to my friends about what they did to revise and then stealing their ideas, because, good tips.
I love that last tip. That's brilliant. So Libby is a 4th year, I've just realised, because Kathryn told me. So you are a real professional when it comes to examinations. Anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I've done a few exams in my time. I would probably say make sure you know what you're supposed to be doing in the exam. So look at the mark scheme, look at examiners' reports. If you ask your teacher about examiners' reports, they'll be able to provide you with feedback that other students have got from doing the same exam. Just make sure you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing so that you can sort of spend your effort in the best way possible when you're revising.
That's brilliant. Again, I should have listened to people like you when I did my exams. So we'll keep going with the Q&A for a bit. I know we're close to running out of time, but we'll carry on for now because there are so many great questions. I do feel like that maybe Tom has actually, got a really bad neck and we should be calling an ambulance or something. And he was like, why didn't we sort him out? We could see that he had a stiff neck, but anyway, I'm sure he's just frozen. So there's a lot of questions, a few questions about tutorials. I think people are quite fascinated by how tutorials work and whether they're scary and how much you learn during tutorials. So there's a few questions like that. Maybe we'll have Louis and Kelvin. Do you want to tell us about what a typical tutorial is like, and are they scary or are they always good fun, or both?
Yeah, so the way they work varies on the tutor. Most tutors have individual ways of doing things. Some will like to take quite a dominant role in tutorials. They'll like talk you through things and then get your response back. Others will like you to sort of present on your essays. So it usually be centered around the work that you've done that week. So it's always very, very useful to get the direct feedback from something that you've worked on, something you've put effort into. And I think it's probably the best teaching format I've experienced, just because of the direct direct feedback and the ability to ask questions on specific things from someone who knows exactly what they're talking about. And I think it's very helpful and very useful and enjoyable at some points.
Well, we call them supervisions in Cambridge, and they vary quite a lot from course to course. In maths, and I think probably most science subjects, the way it works is you prepare and you do a problem set beforehand, and that might take you around a week or so. And then you go to the supervision and you'll discuss what you did well, what you didn't do so well, anything you don't quite understand. And essentially their job is to help you understand the content and to know how to solve the problems. And yeah, it's great because in maths, it's generally 2 students to 1 supervisor. So you have a lot of individual time. If you have any problems, you can ask. And, you know, a lot of the times the supervisors have been through similar sorts of things. So like you don't feel stupid when you have to ask something. Like the supervisor knows what you're going through.
Brilliant. So a couple of quick. So it's come to 7 o'clock, but we feel we've got so many questions. We'll just keep going for a little bit. If that's all right. Don't feel you have to stay, but we'd love you to stay. Right. So Kathryn is going to take us home with a bit more sharing.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, we've got so many fantastic questions coming in. One which I really would love to get answered by some of the students is, how do I get motivation? And similarly, kind of what would you say to your year 10 or 11 self when you're in that position of like not being sure if you wanted to go to uni, not being sure if you wanted to even think about Oxbridge? How did you kind of get the motivation to think about university, look at courses, kind of prep yourself for exams?
I go back to my previous answer of I don't like thinking about things on my own. So I didn't really think about university. I didn't sit down in my room and think about it on my own. I chatted with my friends about it. I chatted with my parents about it. Yeah, I just like talking to other people, and we kind of sit down and do it together, which was quite fun. So I guess that was kind of my main source of motivation, is probably just talking to other people and chatting to my friends about things.
Thanks. And if any of you could give a piece of advice to your year 10 or 11 self, big ask, but what would that be?
I'd probably say to get into a good routine of balancing study time, revising time with having fun and having time off. I found when I was revising for my GCSEs and A-levels and uni, some days you feel really motivated and other days you just can't be bothered. And that's perfectly normal. That happens to all of us. So I find that if you have a good routine of working for however much time you want to work every single day or most days in the week, it's much easier to do it when you don't feel motivated. Yeah, so a routine is probably the main thing for me.
Yeah, I'd probably say just don't really let anything hold you back. Just have as much ambition as possible, reach for the stars, like that kind of thing. Just if you want to go for something, go for it and try your best. And doesn't really matter what anyone else says. If you particularly are interested in it and want to do it, then go for it.
Another question, our most popular question, is what GCSEs and A-levels do you need to get a place in Oxford or Cambridge? So our typical entry requirements, it depends on the course at which uni, but the typical entry requirements is AAA up to 2 A stars and A at A level. Obviously, if you're doing an equivalent qualification in the UK, that's absolutely fine too. It doesn't have to be A levels. And regarding GCSEs, this is a question that we get asked loads, which is what's the minimum amount of, 8s or 9s or something that I need to get into Oxbridge. But we don't actually have minimum GCSE requirements for our courses at Oxford or Cambridge. A high proportion of students do get a large number of 8s and 9s, but not everyone does. And also we take GCSEs and we take your contextual data into account. So we can see kind of what averages at your school are like. We can see if you've had a disrupted education that's affected your GCSE grades. And so we take that kind of thing into account. And GCSEs for us aren't the be all and end all. We won't reject someone based on their GCSE grades. We've got a lot of people asking as well, is having 4 A levels an advantage? We'll have a look at that in more detail in the subject choice workshop, which we're going to run. But at Oxford and Cambridge, our typical offers are all based on 3 A levels. So there's no pressure from us at all to take 4 A levels. So it's really down to your personal choice. If there's a 4th subject, which you really don't want to give up because you love it so much, then take it. But if you're thinking, I need to take 4 A-levels because that's going to impress Oxbridge, and then you end up stretching yourself too thin, don't do that, because we don't need those 4 A-levels. I see Tom's back and his internet has reconnected. Welcome back, Tom. I think we've got kind of through the majority of the big questions that we can really answer at this point today. I know one of the questions was about what separates a successful Oxbridge candidate from everyone else, and those are those points that I mentioned of the things that we're looking for: that subject enthusiasm, you know, being really curious and wanting to explore stuff to do with your subject, having that academic potential and ability to come and make the most of, you know, learning new things, and having that one-to-one teaching time that you get at Oxbridge. So those are the things that we want you to think about and focus on when you're in school as well. So you can ask your teachers questions if there's something that you don't understand, or if there's something you're curious about that you'd like to find out more about, or you want to come along to one of the free events that different universities are running and engage with your subject. It doesn't have to be Oxbridge, can be any university. And just get involved in the kind of extra stuff that you can do to kind of explore where your interests lie and what you think you might like to do in the future. Even though we don't have specific requirements for GCSE grades to get into Oxford or Cambridge, do just make sure you're fulfilling your potential. Everyone's potential is different to someone else's, but you can just do your best. And those grades are probably going to be on your CV for quite a while afterwards. Some of the universities might look at them more than Oxford and Cambridge do. So it is worth just working hard and doing the best that you can in your given situation. That would be my kind of parting advice for this session. Joe, would you like to add anything to that before we say bye to all our attendees today?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about looking at the student ambassadors and how brilliant and amazing they've been. So thanks so much for all your time. Tom, you were even good when you had no internet, if you ask me. And I just want you to believe that that could be you in like 4 or 5 years' time, that you can go off and study at the university of your dreams and have an absolutely amazing time. And like the only surefire way that you won't be able to do that is if you don't apply, if you don't go for, you know, your top university choice. So just believe in yourself. Your teachers clearly do, and everyone else will. So just believe in yourself and believe that you can achieve something amazing, and that's half the battle, really.
Thanks, Joe. Very wise words. And thanks so much to everyone who came along today on a cold Thursday evening to this session. We really appreciate it. We hope you found it useful. We're looking forward to chatting to you again in the other webinars in our series. A huge thank you to our student ambassadors who came along and answered all the 100+ questions that we've managed to get through. That's been fantastic. We hope you found this session useful. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.